Say, listen, you don't belong in this space, and I like to prove that they do. It crosses racial lines, political lines, socioeconomic lines, religious lines. It doesn't matter to me, right? I think that when people have incredible gifts, they should throw them in that way.
Welcome to Opportunity Knocks. I'm your host, Todd Patton, and I have a special guest today. I'm in Delray. I drove the Sprinter to Delray, just pulled in, and I'm right in front of Throw Social. And the guest we have with us in the Sprinter today is my man, Tarek. And it's just, when you have a one name, just Tarek, you're a special guy.
That's what I feel like. Tariq Myers is the full thing. That's my government in case anyone wants to try to find me. But everybody knows me as Tarek. And brother, it's so good to be with you. Out of all the places that I've done podcast episodes, interviews, you name it, it's probably my favorite environment. I love that you're parked outside, and I can't wait to see where we take this conversation. So thank you, brother.
I'm excited. And just to give you guys the backstory, Tarek and I met just a week and a half ago, and the meeting was at his hookah lounge, which, by the way, is badass.
Yeah.
What's the name of that? Let's get that.
It's called Shisha House in Boca. You can follow us on social. It's shishahouse.fl. Just getting started, but really enjoying the experience. Thanks for the shout out, brother.
Yeah, and that's a recent business, right?
It is. I just acquired it in November. Right?
Oh,
it's
man,
like a side hobby, it's a distraction from my day gig. Yeah.
So I want to hear about the day gig, but I want to go back, because when we started talking, you mentioned Silicon Valley, and that always, because they're saying that Miami and South Florida is, the up and coming, the next thing. I'd love to hear about, because you have that. So why don't you give me a background? But even taking a little farther back, because you grew up in Boston, right?
I'm gonna run it back, man. I'm gonna run it back. So I, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Shout out to your listeners. Subscribe, share, do whatever it takes. Love being here. I grew up in the city of Boston, and I'm a Boston guy. Still have a 617 area code. And one of the things about my upbringing is, I grew up in a city where the average net worth for a family like mine was $8. I didn't see examples of entrepreneurship or, folks really, being able to make it out of communities like mine very often. If anything, I saw more exceptions, right, to the rule than the norm. But it didn't mean that I didn't see incredibly talented people that I grew up with, right? My mom was a single mom. I've never gone to a public school. From the time that I could crawl to the time that I graduated from college, I've always been in private schools. And it was a testament to my mom just working incredibly hard, recognizing the fact that the education system was, frankly, set up to make me fail, right? And so as I got older, I started realizing very quickly that, it matters, right? Who you surround yourself with. It matters the type of examples of success you can see. That it broke my heart, even as a young age, to see that folks who were just as talented as I was, right? Because of what zip code they were born into, perhaps what political party they were part of, you name it, were kind of left out of opportunity. So the reason why I love just the Opportunity Knocks piece in general is because I believe that, talent is universal, right? And it's up to folks like you and I to make sure that everyone can really have access to the pathways and the lessons learned and everything else like that in between. So what did that experience do for me? What that experience did for me was say that I'm going to dedicate my entire existence to making sure that I could broaden the opportunity landscape for folks. It didn't matter where you were. You could be a young brother from the Poconos, right? You can be a young guy like me from the city of Boston. You could be someone who grew up in straight up Mississippi and Kentucky, or someone who grew up here in Miami.
Zip codes didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't care, who
but you like the underdog, it sounds like.
I love the underdog. I love folks who folks say, listen, you don't belong in this space, and I like to prove that they do. It crosses racial lines, political lines, socioeconomic lines, religious lines. It doesn't matter to me, right? I think that when people have incredible gifts, they should throw them in that way. So that's how I got started in my career, and how.
Sorry to interrupt you, but first of all, big shout out to your mom for taking that risk and saying, I know these schools in the city of Boston aren't the best for my son. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
It was just she and I for 14 years. And then clearly I was not enough, because 14 years later, she had my beautiful, wonderful sister who is on her way to Harvard right now.
Wow. What a story that is.
Yeah,
what's her
crazy,
name?
Right? Her name's Kalea. Shout out to my sister, Kalea. She's absolutely beautiful. Just celebrated her 18th birthday a few days ago.
And she's going to Harvard.
She's going to Harvard. And it goes to show that when you take the stress away, right? When you remove some of those barriers, when you have examples to look up to, it can dramatically change life outcomes. dreams, right?
So you were an inspiration, I'm sure, to her.
I want to say that, but I also think that, it was a village. It was
and
a
mom
team
too,
effort,
yeah.
right? Mom
Both
too, right? We were able to figure it out the second time around. And so just so incredibly proud of her. And
so it sounds like to me, the first opportunity that was knocking was put there by mom
absolutely.
to put you in these schools
Absolutely.
that you got this education that was
absolutely
awesome. So then you leave Boston, right?
I do. I went to school in upstate New York. I was a politics major up in college, went to Ithaca College, shout out to IC, and I thought I was going to go to law school. Ithaca, yeah. Thought I was going to law school. I think that's what every first-generation graduate thinks he's supposed to do, who cares a little bit about the world and the world around. That's how you change, experiences. But life just had a different idea for me. I made my way to California. I had $2,000 in my bank account. Didn't know how I was going to make it.
This is right after you graduated.
Literally right after I graduated. I spent 3 months at home working at a dental practice as a receptionist. It did. Saved as much as I could. Got a one-way ticket to California and said I'm going to figure it out. And started working at this nonprofit called the Green Lining Institute, which was essentially trying to figure out across all communities, how do we just make this economy work for everyone? So if there were young people or old folks or folks in between who are looking to buy a home, who are looking to start a business, who are looking to engage this idea of the American dream, how could my organization make it better for them? And that's how I got started. That was my first moment encountering opportunity knocks, to be honest.
And how long were you there for?
Only for a year.
Okay.
And then I was up at the Capitol in Sacramento, testifying on this hearing around environment or environmental justice or some jazz like that. And right before my panel were these two funky guys and this woman who ended up being John and Logan, the co-founders of Lyft, and Annabelle Chang, who was the VP of Government Relations for Lyft at the time. And I heard their story. I didn't know anything about Lyft.
Was Lyft even in existence then?
It was, but it was so small,
yeah.
Right? This is a time when they were still riding around with big, fuzzy pink mustaches on the front of the hoods. And I heard this story, and I was like, whoa, this is so me. It was, they were telling the story of what happens when you put two strangers in a car. Maybe a driver is looking to save up for their kids' college. Maybe a driver is looking to, make some home repairs. Maybe a driver is still recovering from the '08 recession, right? And then on the flip side, there was these passengers that I was hearing about, stories of folks who just live 1 mile away from the transit station but have such a hard time getting there, or folks who are trying to, buy groceries or get to the grocery store but don't have access to a car. I mean, the story was so beautiful. And it was two folks who just needed each other. And John and Logan had this vision of, what happens when we decide to stop designing cities around cars and start designing cities around people, right? What if no one had a car, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just this experience. So I say all that to say that for me, what I saw was Lyft was not only providing economic opportunity to drivers who range in age and race and identity and experience in city, but also for passengers who, may not have a family car. Just like I didn't have a family car growing up, but just needed to get to point A to point B. So that was my first, I think, jump into what it meant to work for a brand and for an organization that was trying to expand the opportunity landscape.
I want to hear this story. So meet these two guys, and then did you approach them?
Absolutely.
I got to hear that's an opportunity knocking.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, Lyft is early on. This is the early.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up being employee 97, so that should give you context. Yeah, and
that's awesome.
But I approached all three, and I was just bold, and I said, "Listen, whatever your magic that you're cooking up in the background, I want to be part of it."
And what was your role to start?
So when I started, I was actually so to be honest, I thought I made a fool of myself. I didn't hear from these folks. 3 months later, they sent a team down to this conference that my nonprofit was sponsoring in LA, and they eventually offered me a job and said, "I want you to come on and help us build our community affairs team." So part of my
background in politics,
maybe I don't even know. It wasn't even politics or policy. I was just like, "Hey, I'm really good at talking to people. Like, let me do this." Yeah. And I fell in love with it because I was a politics major, so I always thought that my path was like Capitol Hill, but that wasn't for me. Right? It was so hard to get a Capitol Hill internship. Mm-hmm. So I never thought that Lyft could scratch that political nugget for me, but it did. And so as a young guy, 21, 22, 23, I'm traveling the country, meeting with Austin City Council and, different aldermen in Chicago.
Now, were you presenting to these, because back then it was such an unheard of, no one's, they would say, yeah, you're going to cars drive up and people get in it?
It was wild.
So you were basically trying to sell them the concept too,
That's
right?
exactly right. I was working with policy managers. My job was to organize all the needs of the drivers, the passengers, the community folks, everyone who was basically voting for these electeds to be in office. My job was to go apply the pressure, okay? And say that, like, this is a great service for a community that needs it, you know? And I felt like I was really making a difference for a really long time. And then...
and how long were you there for?
I was there for almost 4 years.
Wow.
And at about the 600-person inflection point, remember, I was employee 97. So a few hundred folks later, the co-founders then reached out to me and said, Tarek, you know, we're doing such a good job expanding opportunity on the ground, but we need our offices to kind of reflect the experiences of the different cities that we're serving. So I want you to step up and build an employee experience program that makes Lyft be the #1 company to work for.
Employee benefit meaning the drivers or the staff in-house?
So the staff in-house.
Okay.
Because our drivers weren't employees.
Independent.
They were independent
Right, okay.
contractors.
Got
You
it,
work
got it.
when you want. You work the hours that you
Yep.
want. So that was my new challenge. And I said, I would love to do this. Because if I'm being honest, everyone who worked there were kind of like your typical Silicon Valley people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like folks who worked at Google, folks who worked
Yeah.
at Facebook, you know, folks who worked at Amazon. But again, I just knew that in order for us to create the best experience on the ground, right, we needed folks to reflect the folks that we were serving. I'll give you a great example, Todd.
Yeah.
Like a great one was there was a time where, I don't know if you know this, but the Bay Area has like a really large deaf or hard of hearing community who don't always have access to like incredible employment opportunities, right? Mm-hmm. And they were able to drive for Lyft. But the challenge that we had was that we didn't have a deaf or hard of hearing staff member, like anywhere to be found in the office. And so folks were just having a tough experience. And so we ended up hiring a deaf and hard of hearing engineer, not because they were deaf and hard of hearing, but because we were trying to expand what the fabric of the company looked like, who we were serving, and completely revolutionized, right, the experience of this community, right, on the platform.
Wow.
So again, opportunity knocks, right?
Yeah.
That's again, like me growing into this space, and that's how I ended
Very
my
cool.
career. I left at about the 3,000 person inflection point once we went public.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then tell me the next step, because you've got some good, you're young still, and you got some great experience living in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And what was it, were you like, I want to get out of this place? Or?
I drank the Kool-Aid, brother.
Yeah.
I was in it. But I was ready for my next challenge. And what I realized was that I'm more oriented to being a builder, right, than I probably am someone who's great at maintenance. Mm-hmm. And so I was really looking for my next best thing. And I was like, how do I keep this theme of opportunity kind of going? And then I ended up encountering another funky startup who were talking about like digital currency and this thing called Bitcoin. And I was like, what the hell is this, right? Mm-hmm. Like my grandmama is still putting money under her mattress, you know? So I was like, what is this? And I ended up meeting a couple of folks over there who essentially had this mission, then called Coinbase, who was having a mission to create more economic freedom in the world, you know? And I was like, economic freedom? I was like, wow, like this is incredible. So I didn't know anything about cryptocurrency. I want to be super transparent. And not a lot of people did at the time. But I also joined them pretty early, probably about an employee, I think like 100 or so, 125. And
what company was this?
This was Coinbase.
Yeah.
Wow. And the charge was exactly the same. The charge was to build an employee experience that reflects the users that we're trying to serve. And it was an uphill battle, but I loved the work. I was in D.C. meeting with folks like Rashida Tlaib, you know, or folks on the left and the right, trying to convince them to adopt this technology, figuring out how this technology could be useful in their districts.
What experience. I mean,
wild.
Wow.
I wasn't even 26 at this point.
And you didn't know going in, you weren't familiar with it.
Not at all.
Which not really many people were,
but
right?
I was a sponge. It's like, you give me a mission, I will go evangelize.
That's awesome.
So that was that experience. And so for me, continuing that thread, I was like, wow, I love the idea that not only am I creating like more employment opportunities for folks, but I was also helping evangelize this product that I deeply believed would create more financial freedom in the world. This idea that banks and, you know, credit bureaus, etc., shouldn't control your financial freedom, right? That you should be able to take money across borders, right? That, you know, why, if I have a family member that's in the Dominican Republic or Haiti, should I be going to a Western Union and paying all these fees just to send some money over there? Or frankly, in the UK or in Ireland.
Why buying a house? I mean, anything, right?
Anything, right? It was just wild. Yeah. So the greatest gift from that experience was, how do I make the jump for folks who are small farmers, right, in the Midwest, to have them believe, who may not even have a checking account, that they should make the jump from Finance 1.0, right, using a debit card and writing checks, all the way to Finance 2.0, which is giving value to this digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, crypto crossed political lines, it crossed cultural lines, it crossed socioeconomic lines. And again, that's just where I do my best work. Because I believe that in all the stuff that's happening kind of in our world right now, it's so easy to focus on all the things that separate us,
mm-hmm.
right? And for me, I was just like, no. Like, could a solid mission be the thing that brings communities together? And so that was kind of like my second gig.
And how long were you there for?
About 3 years.
Wow.
Until they went public.
Jeez.
And then I was like, time to do something else.
Yeah.
So
what experience. And now you're 30 years old. You have so much information, knowledge. Yeah. I mean, to do these 2 startups and basically educate people about something that's brand new. When it was Lyft, that was new. And then when it was Coinbase, nobody knew. So
it was a blessing.
So you've got a lot of fire in you. And you bring it down to South Florida, which I love.
I love it. I love it. So right after that, man, this is what brought me here. I founded my own company. And I said, I want to create a company where everyone and their mother is talking about great talent. I want to help young people now get into this space. Because Coinbase and Lyft gave me, probably not for the next person, but for a poor kid from Boston, gave me life-changing wealth that I was able to buy my grandmother a retirement home and put my sister through school and put aside a college fund. And I'm not one of these multimillionaires out here in the universe, but for me, it was wealth that I never imagined for myself. Mm-hmm. And I said, if I could have this experience, other young people should. So I founded in 2020 a company called Untapped, which is a Silicon Valley venture-backed firm that helps young people from around the country find opportunity in tech and finance through internships and first jobs. And what I firmly believe is that if you give young people the tools that they need to be successful and you get them to that first job, it will transform the direction of their lives. And I had that experience. Like that first job at Lyft, right? That first real job transformed my entire life.
Sure.
So I wanted other young people to have
an opportunity.
Yeah.
So that was in 2020. You were still living in California.
I was living in California.
And and it's tapped?
It's Untapped.
Untapped is a nonprofit, or
no? It's a for-profit company.
It is.
We're a SaaS talent marketplace.
It's a SaaS product.
Yes, we made about we raised about $70 million over the course of our 4 years. We at the peak of our success, we were doing about $10 million in annual recurring revenue with average contract values of about $20K. We were working with some of the best companies in the world, from JP Morgan to SpaceX to Twilio to Lyft to Coinbase to even some of my alma maters. Uber, the list, Mattel.
And these are high school kids, college kids that would have internships?
These are college kids. So college kids. So the tech internship process is actually incredibly competitive. Mm-hmm. It's like applying to a top 14 school. There's only so many seats. And imagine the number of, let's say, computer science graduates who are all graduating and or applying for internships at the same time. Mm-hmm. The reality is that recruiters were overwhelmed. So what did they need? They needed a tool that enabled them to not just focus on the top 14 schools, mm-hmm. but to democratize access to talent across the country. And that's the solution that we provided. And we thought that 2020 would be headwinds for us, but they were tailwinds because everyone was virtual, right? So I did that for a little while, and then just actually sold the company to an education firm in December and said, where the hell am I going to go? And I said, I'm coming to South Florida.
Oh, you just moved down.
I just moved here November 18th of 2023.
Unbelievable.
Wild.
That's such a good... And you met my brother, Ryan.
I love Ryan. Yeah. I really do. Shout out to Ryan. If y'all need to figure out how you could have buy this next dream home,
Ryan's the guy.
Shout out to Ryan. Ryan's the guy.
He was actually my first guest on Opportunity Knocks.
I love that.
Yeah.
I got to watch the episode.
So I want to hear now. That's an unbelievable story, by the way. Thank you for sharing that. And there's a lot of opportunity knocking through your journey, and you're still so young, which is amazing. So now we're in the Sprinter. I look out the window and I see Throw Social, and this app that you're building now. I want to hear about. This is the best of, right?
It is.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to share. So I wish I could say that it was my baby, but it's not. Steve Dickstein, who built his career in talent management and some of the films that we all know and have come to love. Through one way or the other, with his wife, kind of moved to Delray Beach. And originally, as he was buying his house, realized that there was so much in the community, right, that needed to be accessed, needed to be evangelized, whether it was restaurants, whether it was different services, and just had such a hard time figuring out where to even find these things. So, from that point, he birthed Best of Local Delray Beach, which was meant just to be a place where if you're a local, you can get local suggestions for things that are in the area, just anything and everything.
Well, which, by the way, the psychology of how we search, because as you know, I had a digital marketing company,
right,
is we go to Google and we trust Google to tell us when we type in best Italian restaurant in Delray.
Exactly.
You guys are fixing that because you're using technology to put it in an app. Right?
Exactly. So if the best way to describe Best of Local is like the premier hyper-local discovery app, right? Like you could trust, Yelp and Google and Angie's List and Thumbtack, but what if you were able to access the magic of what it means to be local by going to an app that's been curated by your neighbors, by the people that are around you, right? Not by some artificial intelligence bot, not by some algorithm on Google, but by humans.
Yep.
And what's funny is that, brother, we live in such a digital world, especially post-pandemic. And yet what's remarkable is that consumers still crave local experiences. That's what they want. Right? That's what they're hungry for. Why? They believe that the quality of service will be better. They're engendering trust. And the list goes on. But for me personally, I think the reason why the company is so compelling is because we're not trying to be something for everybody, right? We're really trying to target mid-market cities, right, who've experienced probably the most positive migration in the last 5 years, and give them the tools that they need to keep dollars local, right? Because we know that these communities, right, the American dream has shifted. And it's not, for everyone, it's not about owning the white picket fence home anymore. Now it's about, being an entrepreneur and, embracing the digital age and offering incredible experiences. That's where we are. So
experiences. Exactly. That's the key. And speaking of experiences, I'm hearing, I've never been to Throw Social, but
it's my first time too, actually.
Oh, it is? Yeah. I've heard the experience in there, but it is unbelievable. They have different rooms with different, so I'm really excited to take this inside. But tell me about the events you guys have, because this event tonight is an event put on by you guys, right?
Well, you know this well, Todd. It's that we believe that if our mission, right, is to enable folks to experience the magic of what it means to be a local, right, then we know that we can't just keep that on the app, right? That we have to bring that mission to life each and every month in our in-person experiences. So once a month, we're lucky enough to work with some of the best, bars, restaurants, experiences, venues in Delray Beach, and welcome our customers, right, who are loving the app, and our prospects who want to get down with the get down, and our friends of the community, and members of the Chamber of Commerce, and electeds, and the list goes on. But it's our way of saying that this app that we're building is not the destination, right? It's not like Instagram. It's not like Yelp. That's a destination. We believe the app for us is a gateway to create more experiences, a gateway to create more connection, a gateway to engender more trust. So what you see us do month over month, week over week as we're planning it, is let these events be the center of gravity where all that energy that we experience can come together, and where folks don't just feel the mission through the work that we're doing with the product. They feel the mission in person.
By a handshake.
By a handshake, by a hug.
Hug.
By a clink of the glass.
Yeah,
right?
I love that.
That's where we're at, brother.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man, thank you.
And, speaking of that, I'm ready to go in there and check this out.
I'm ready to show you too, man. I'm excited.
Man, let me tell you, it's been an honor having you here. Your story, because I didn't know all this.
Yeah,
I knew a little bit, but this was amazing. And I got a ton of value out of that. I'm looking forward to, like I said, building a great relationship with you. And how about we go in and check out Throw Social?
I would love to.
Let's
brother.
go.
Let's go see it.
My man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it big time.
That was great.